experience a shortage are required to notify the FDA, and it just gives the FDA that little extra time, whether it's 1 month, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year, to look for the drug in other locations. And I think it also would give us some insight into what is actually going on here so we can fix this. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
The Senator from Nebraska.
Mr. President, I rise today to honor a fallen hero, Petty Officer First Class Caleb Nelson of Omaha, Nebraska. Petty Officer Nelson died on October 1, 2011, when his vehicle was struck by an explosive device in Afghanistan. He was on combat patrol with fellow SEAL team members when the attack occurred. His desire to succeed and help others led him to military service. For Caleb, it had to be the best. For him, that was the Navy SEALs. Military commanders trusted Petty Officer Nelson's judgment and his commitment. He was typically assigned a leading role on search missions, placing the lives of many SEALs in his capable hands. Caleb was in the lead position when he was killed. The decorations and badges earned during his distinguished service speak to his dedication and to his skill. Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, Good Conduct Ribbon, National Defense Medal, Iraq Campaign Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal, Global War on Terrorism Medal, Sea Service Ribbon, NATO Service Medal, Expert Rifle Ribbon, Expert Pistol Ribbon. Although Caleb's life was cut short, he had a wide circle of friends and touched the lives and the hearts of many. His dynamic and energetic personality caused people to look to him as a motivator and as a mentor. Those who knew him recall his deep faith in Christ, his strong interest in physical fitness, and a focus on getting things done. Throughout his life, Caleb grew in his Christian faith and quickly became a rock of support for others. There was no problem too small to lay before Caleb. There was also an unrelenting love for family dwelling inside this tough, physically fit SEAL. His wife, Anna, and sons, David and Kyle, meant everything to him. When Caleb wasn't training or on assignment, he was with them. Caleb also benefited from a strong relationship with his loving parents, Larry and Barb, his 9 siblings, in a faithful community of fellow believers who admired his strength, his compassion, and his leadership. Today I ask that God be with the family and friends of Caleb Nelson and bring them comfort during this very difficult time. Their faith is strong, so I know they will join me in seeking God's blessings on those currently serving in uniform, especially those involved in combat operations. May God bless our service members and their families and bring them home safely. Mr. President, I yield the floor. I note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Gaga. The Senate President, I ask consent to call the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection. Morning business is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate will proceed to executive session to consider the following nomination, which the clerk will report.
Nomination: Stephen A. Higginson of Louisiana to be United States Circuit Judge.
Under the previous order, there will be 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled in the usual form.
Mr. President, the distinguished presiding officer will recall Stephen Higginson of Louisiana, who is here to fill a vacancy in the Fifth Circuit. Now, I mention that vacancy because it's a judicial emergency. It's been that for more than a year. And I say the distinguished presiding officer will remember because, like all members of the Judiciary Committee, we voted for him more than 3.5 months ago on July 14th every Republican, every Democratic senator supported him. Under normal circumstances, that would have meant that within a couple of days, the Senate would have voted on him too. Instead, it has been delayed. It's been delayed since the middle of July. So here we are one day before November. In a way, it's almost humiliating for a nominee, especially one as well qualified as this nominee. But it also reflects so badly on the United States Senate. It says, because one person may decide, oh, we don't want to have a vote yet, we hold up such a well-qualified person. We have 22 superbly qualified judicial nominations. They're pending on the Senate calendar. They can all be voted on today. I say that because judicial vacancies have remained at historically high levels for well over 2.5 years. We owe it to the American people to work together to ensure that the federal courts are functioning. Now, Stephen Higginson is a well-respected consensus nominee. He served as a federal prosecutor for 23 years. He served as a law clerk to Justice Byron White of the United States Supreme Court and to Chief Judge Patricia Wall of the D.C. Circuit. He currently teaches law at the New Orleans College of Law. The American Bar Association's Standing Committee on the Federal Judiciary unanimously rated him well qualified, the highest rating they can get, to serve in the Fifth Circuit. And the two senators from Louisiana, one a Democrat, one a Republican, Democratic Senator Mary Landrieu and Republican Senator David Vitter, support his nomination. In the past, Mr. President, such a nominee would go sailing through and not just have to wait week after week, month after month after month. Installed for months by the Republican leadership. I should incidentally, just so the record is clear, the day, July 14th, when he was confirmed in by the Judiciary Committee, or nomination sent forward by the Judiciary Committee, we cleared his nomination on the Democratic side. It's been held up on the other side ever since. Now, the people of Louisiana, actually the other states in the Fifth Circuit, Mississippi and Texas, deserve an explanation for these unnecessary delays. But so do the 161 million Americans who live in districts or circuits that have a judicial vacancy today. 161 million Americans live in districts or circuits that have a judicial vacancy. And they could be filled today if we would just vote on the other 22 nominations that have long ago gone through the Senate Judiciary Committee. We did our work in the Judiciary Committee. We held the hearings on these people. We did the vetting of them. We went through the FBI reports. We got the Bar Association reports. We debated them. We voted on them. We sent them to the Senate floor, and they've been languishing ever since. Now, look at where the judicial vacancies are. 23 nominees covering 24 states. And these are designated a judicial emergency. Now, that's kind of discouraging. If you're the person who has a case that you want to bring before a court, it may be your only time to go to court. It may be critical to you, one way or the other. You may be plaintiff, you may be defendant. And you're told, sorry, you can't come. We don't have a judge. Well, why don't you have a judge? Well, the president nominated somebody. He or she was approved. They were voted out of committee. They were sent to the floor of the Senate. Every single Democratic senator said that we're ready to vote them up or down, and they're held up. You know, these districts or circuits, 161 million Americans. That's more than half of all Americans. And these judicial vacancies could be filled today if Republicans would just let us vote on these nominees. 24 states are served by federal courts with vacancies that can be filled immediately if Republicans would allow votes on the judicial nominations. Let me talk about some of these places. Second Circuit has a vacancy. It's a judicial emergency. That includes Vermont, New York, and Connecticut. The Fifth Circuit, Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi. The Ninth Circuit, California, Alaska, Nevada, Arizona, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Washington, and Hawaii. The 11th Circuit, which includes Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, they've all been designated judicial emergencies by the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. Saw vacancies in district courts in New York, and Texas, and Utah. I'd hope my friends on the other side of the aisle would explain to the millions of Americans in these states why the Senate isn't being allowed to vote on these vacancies, especially with the bipartisan consensus nominees who have been vetted and approved by a bipartisan majority, usually unanimously, in the Judiciary Committee. The American people need functioning federal courts with judges, not vacancies. There is no good reason, no explanation, for the Republican leadership's continued refusal to vote on these stalled nominations. Senator Grassley and I have worked together to ensure that each of the 23 nominations now on the Senate calendar is fully considered. They had a very thorough, very fair process, completed our questionnaire and our questionnaire hearings. Like Mr. Higginson, the other 22 nominees are awaiting final Senate action. Our qualified nominees, actually 19 of them, reported unanimously, every single Republican, every single Democratic senator. But they sit here and wait and wait and wait. And, as importantly, the people, these 24 states, wait and wait and wait, and they say, when are we going to get a judge? These delays, as I point out, are unnecessary, but more than that, they're damaging. The number of judicial vacancies remains at historic levels. They've risen above 90 in August 2009. They've stayed near above that level ever since. The number of vacancies is twice as high as it was at this point in President Bush's first term. The Senate was expeditiously voting on consensus judicial nominations. With 1 in 10 federal judgeships currently vacant, the Senate really has to come together to address the serious judicial vacancies crises on federal courts around the country. The only way to do that is actually fulfill our constitutional duty, vote them up or vote them down. We're well behind the pace we set in dramatically reducing vacancies by regularly scheduling votes during President George W. Bush's first term. At this point in President Bush's first term, the Senate had confirmed 166 of his nominees for the Federal Circuit and District Courts. Actually, 100 of those 166 were done during the 17 months I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Now, instead of 166, because Republicans have done what we didn't do to President Bush because we allowed votes to go on, we've only confirmed 113 of President Obama's nominees to Federal Circuit and District Courts. Now, the last work period, we started to make some progress in voting on some of President Obama's longest pending judicial nominees, and I thank Majority Leader Reid for working hard to schedule these votes. Hope we can do it some more. Got a long way to go to match the 205 district and circuit judges we agreed to vote on during President Bush's time. But I think if you look at this, ask the American people, especially the 24 states, 161 million Americans who don't have judges should be confirmed. We're saying, don't you do anything. Let's show them we can do it. I ask consent my full statement be made part of the record.
Without objection.
I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Illinois.
Mr. President, we are at a significant moment in the relationship between the banking industry on Wall Street and businesses and consumers on Main Street all across America. This could be, in the words of Malcolm Gladwell, a tipping point, and it could lead to a much more balanced relationship in the future. It's interesting how we reached this point. There was a time not that long ago when Wall Street and Main Street both played by the same rules. Banks and businesses sold goods and services to consumers in a competitive market environment and with transparent prices. Banks performed and still perform a valuable function in our economy, providing capital and liquidity. Businesses, of course, in the sale of goods and services, are generating the activity that fuels our economy. They were complementary. They worked with one another. The successful banks and businesses were the ones that were more efficient than their competitors. They offered better products, better prices. This system, characterized by transparency, competition, and choice, worked well for everyone. Consumers, banks, businesses, all their customers. It was the basis for a free market economy in a great nation. In recent years, after the repeal of Glass-Steagall, though, things changed. Banks started moving to a new role. Beyond capital and liquidity, the level of profitability and the activities of the bank started moving in many different directions. Instead of practicing transparency and competition, many banks started cutting corners, imposing fees, raising interest rates, and basically creating policies that were very difficult for even their most loyal customers to follow. That was a situation which had gotten out of hand. We saw hidden fees pop up left and right, like overdraft fees on checking accounts that went completely beyond any reasonable penalty for a person who's guilty of that conduct. Sudden interest rate charges on credit cards. Consumers many times didn't even know they were being charged the fees until it was too late. And the banks figured that if all the banks did it, consumers had no choice. They had to live with it. Perhaps no fee better characterized the absence of transparency and competition than the interchange fee or the swipe fee. This is a fee that banks receive from merchants and retailers each time a person uses a debit card or a credit card. And it's a fee unlike any other. With most fees, you see one fee rate charged by one bank, like Bank of America, another rate by another bank, and another one by a Wells Fargo or Chase or whatever it happens to be. But with interchange fees, all banks receive the same fee rate. There's no competition. The banks realize that competition holds fee rates down. So what they did is they went to Visa and MasterCard, and on debit cards, Visa has about 80% of the debit card business, and they said to them, you can dictate the interchange fees that the banks will collect. And they did. This duopoly, these two major credit card giants, Visa and MasterCard, set fees for all the banks issuing their cards across America. This has been a huge moneymaker for the banks. Banks make an estimated $50 billion a year in debit and credit card interchange fees. And because there's no competition and no negotiation with the retailers, Visa and MasterCard reward their big bank allies with higher fee rates every single year, even as the cost of processing these transactions continues to go down. Swipe fees have become a huge and growing burden for Main Street businesses and customers. And American families ultimately pay the price in the form of higher costs for groceries and gasoline. I think of Potash Supermarket. I've talked about it on the floor many times. Art Potash has become a buddy of mine, second or third generation owning this supermarket near North in Chicago. He's not as big as the big boys, Dominic, Jewel, and the others, but boy, what a nice story he has. Art came to me years ago and said, they're killing me. The debit card swipe fees are killing me. It's their second or third most expensive item when I put together the costs of my business, and it's out of control. I have no control over it. Art was one of the people, he and Rich Neiman down at Quincy, Illinois, retailers, businessmen who got me started on this. Well, it's interesting, Mr. President, something's happening out there in America. It could be that the era of some of these banking practices is coming to an end. Maybe we are reaching a tipping point. In 2009, Congress passed credit card reform that reined in sudden interest rate changes, and regulators placed curbs on abusive overdraft fees. Of course, the credit cards companies and the banks scream bloody murder. Too much government, too much regulation. We didn't listen to them. We listened to American families and consumers. Last year, Congress passed a Wall Street reform bill, and we created a new Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, placed reasonable limits on Visa and MasterCard swipe fee price fixing. No surprise, the banks cried bloody murder. They don't want to make a penny less than they made in the last quarter, even if their past profits were inflated by hidden fees and anti-competitive practices. So now big banks are looking for new ways to squeeze their customers in order to maintain their record profits and 10-figure executive bonuses. But in the past week, something interesting has happened in America. After years of raising fees on their customers without much resistance, several of the biggest banks tried to stick it to their customers again with a new monthly debit card fee. And the consumers of America noticed, stood up, and said, no way. After Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and several other big banks announced these new debit fees, their customers began voting with their feet. New account openings at credit unions and community banks surged, in many cases by 20 to 50%. I'm sure that's good news to my colleague from Iowa, to know that there's more business at the community banks and credit unions of Iowa, leaving the Wall Street banks and coming home to Iowa. It's good news in Illinois. Consumers have been emboldened. They're now saying they will only do business with banks that care about serving them instead of squeezing them. This has been a great development for consumers. It has also been great for those small banks and credit unions, which we value so much in the Midwest, who have never stopped playing by the rules and who have always valued their customers and their communities. Now, November 5th is coming, and it turns out to be a day I wasn't aware of, but I've read about now. They're calling it the National Bank Transfer Day. We're seeing many big banks actually reversing themselves and abandoning their recently announced debit fees in light of the possibility that even more people are going to shift away from the big banks with the monthly debit card fees to community banks and credit unions and other banks that aren't imposing the fees. Big banks are starting to see it just isn't good business to nickel and dime their customers and charge them $5 a month for access to their own checking account. That's what they were doing. At least that's what they were proposing. Can you imagine the big banks ever changing course like this a few years ago? Not a chance. But through reasonable regulation and consumers standing up and being alert, we're restoring transparency and competition to financial services. Transparency and competition are part of a good, functioning free market economy. It's not over by a long shot. The big banks still have enormous power and resources. They're going to continue to try to find ways to make money at the expense of their customers. And that's why we need to do several things. First, we need to confirm once and for all a director for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, I know Wall Street banks and financial institutions and many on the other side of the aisle hate this new bureau, as Dale Bumpers used to say, like the devil hates holy water. But the fact is, this is an agency solely dedicated to ensuring that consumers have good information so they can make good choices. Senate Republicans should lift their hold on Richard Cordray so he can be confirmed to run this important agency. They should stop doing the bidding of the financial institutions who are afraid of oversight and stand on the side of families and small businesses across America. Second, we need to ensure transparency of all bank fees so consumers can't be tricked and trapped. This is the role the CFPB will eventually play, but there's no need for banks to wait to provide this transparency. For example, the Pew Charitable Trust has developed an easy-to-read, one-page model disclosure for banks to list all the fees they can charge on checking accounts. Banks should immediately adopt this Pew Trust disclosure box so that their websites are clear to consumers and consumers can actually comparison shop and choose the bank that best serves their needs. This type of standardized fee transparency will help drive consumer business to the good banks, those that play by the rules and offer a good value at a reasonable price. Third, we have more work to do to bring transparency and competition to the swipe fees. For example, credit card swipe fees are still entirely unregulated, and they can cost a merchant up to 3 to 4% of the transaction amount. Every American should be aware what it costs a merchant to accept the credit card, because ultimately the consumers pay for it. Consumers should particularly be aware how much their local small businesses pay in credit card interchange. They should also know how much more rewards cards cost merchants than non-rewards cards. This will help consumers make more informed choices. If you are for competition and for transparency and for choice, we've got to move to a level where consumers have more information. So I call on the nation's biggest 1% of banks, those with over $10 billion in assets, to disclose in their monthly statements of their cardholders the interchange fees the banks received on each credit card transaction. While it would be ideal for this interchange disclosure to be made known to customers directly at the cash register or on receipts, I recognize that might be difficult. So let's do it on the monthly statement. However, big banks can easily modify these monthly statements to show how much the bank received in interchange on each transaction. This can happen almost immediately. This type of transparency is particularly important because we're seeing big banks try to steer their customers away from paying with debit and toward credit. Have you noticed the ads that are offering rebates on credit cards now? 1%, 2%, even 3% on gasoline. What customers may not realize is that the fee being charged by the credit card company and the bank to the gas station may be far in excess of 3%. So they've already taken the money away from you as you paid for your gas, and then they toss 3 pennies back to you. It's time for a little more disclosure here about the actual relationship between these banks, credit card companies, and the consumers and retailers that deal with them. In closing, I do believe we're at a tipping point when it comes to the balance between Wall Street and Main Street. For too long, Main Street businesses and consumers have been playing by the rules, and Wall Street has been rigging the game. Now, transparency and competition are being restored to the banking industry. A colleague, a member of my staff was down in Georgia over the weekend, and he drove by and saw a little bank called Bank of the Ozarks. I don't know what it was doing in Georgia, but it said Bank of the Ozarks. And they had a sign outside, and it said, "We agree, debit cards should be free." The word is spreading across America, and it's an important word that consumers are paying attention to. We are seeing dramatic increases in the websites of credit unions and community banks, people transferring their money to where they think they're going to get better treatment and a better deal. It's called competition. Transparency and competition are coming to the banking industry. Consumers are getting better information, and many of them are making important choices for their families and businesses. This is going to strengthen small banks and credit unions in Iowa and Illinois and Connecticut and many places all around America. It'll help small businesses in Iowa, too, as well as Illinois, who are being crushed by hidden swipe fees today. It's going to help the economy move forward in a fair way with real disclosure. Let's keep this progress moving. I want to salute those who stood with me on a bipartisan vote, both occasions on the floor, to move forward on this important matter. Just a few weeks ago, major publications like the Wall Street Journal and the Chicago Tribune were jumping all over the Durbin fee. And they were standing by the big banks who said, we're going to put this monthly fee on because of Durbin. Guess what? Those banks are backing off now. They realize that their customers are leaving if they're not treated properly and fairly. Let's continue that for America and the growth of our economy. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Iowa.
Mr. President, today the Senate will vote on the nomination of Stephen A. Higginson to serve as U.S. Circuit Judge, Fifth Circuit. This is a seat that has been deemed by our statistics as a judicial emergency. This is the 15th judicial nomination that we will confirm this month. With this vote today, we have confirmed 51 Article III judicial nominees during this Congress. 30 of those confirmations have been for judicial emergencies. Despite this brisk level of activity, we continue to hear complaints, too many complaints, unjustified complaints, about the lack of real progress by the Senate. Let me set the record straight regarding the real progress that the Senate has made. And this is in regard to President Obama's judicial nominees. We have taken positive action on 87% of the judicial nominations submitted before this Congress. The Senate has confirmed 71% of President Obama's nominees since the beginning of his presidency, including two of the most important Supreme Court justices. We continue to remain ahead of the pace set forth in the 108th Congress under President Bush. So far, we have held hearings on 85% of President Obama's judicial nominees. That is compared to only 79% at this point in the President Bush presidency. I would note that we have another nomination hearing scheduled in the Judiciary Committee Wednesday this week. We've also reported 76% of the judicial nominees received so far this Congress, with 5 more scheduled for consideration Thursday this week. A comparable 75% were reported at this time in the 108th Congress. Now, referring to our critics, critics may dismiss the activity that we accomplished in committee as not making real progress. But everyone knows that no votes can take place on the Senate floor until committee action is complete, and that completion must include hearings as well as markups. Furthermore, when it comes to the floor action, we're making real progress as well. We are well ahead of this session of the confirmation pace in previous sessions of Congress. As I mentioned, after this vote, we will have confirmed 51 judicial nominees during this session of Congress. I would point out that this exceeds the average number of judicial confirmations going back to the first session of the 97th Congress. That session was the beginning of President Reagan's first term in 1981. The average since then is 44 judicial confirmations per session. This puts the current session of Congress in the top 10 of over the last 30 years. This means that during this session, President Obama has had better results with his judicial nominees than President Reagan had in 7 sessions of Congress. It is more confirmed in 5 of 8 sessions of Congress during President Clinton's administration. President George W. Bush had 6 sessions of Congress with fewer nominees confirmed. So, I hope these statistics, as boring as they are, will put to rest insinuations that there's something somehow different about this president, or that he is being treated unfairly
because those sort of comments just do not hold up to analysis. To support the lack of real progress, and those are the words that we keep hearing, some would argue that the only valid measure of progress is how quickly a nominee is confirmed after being reported out of committee. That's only one piece of the confirmation process. Hearings and markups in committee are also necessary components. To ignore those elements distorts the picture. I want to give you an example involving today's nominee, the one we'll be voting on here in less than a half hour. Mr. Higginson was nominated May the 9th this year. He had his hearing 30 days later. The total time from nomination to confirmation is 175 days. Now, compare this to the record of the nomination of Edith Brown Clement. She was the nominee of President Bush to be U.S. Circuit Judge for the Fifth Circuit. Like Mr. Higginson, she too was from Louisiana. Her nomination on May the 9th, 2001 was the first day of her nomination, and because it wasn't handled right away, it had to be returned to the President during the August recess of that year. And of course, a month later, on September the 4th, 2001, she was renominated. Now, compare this length of time involving Judge Clement with the nominee today. As I said, she was renominated September the 4th. She had to wait 148 days for her hearing. The total time for initial nomination to confirmation was 188 days. That is nearly 2 weeks longer than Mr. Higginson's confirmation wait. This is just one example of how cherry-picking one piece of the confirmation process over another can lead to unfounded conclusions. If one argues that Mr. Higginson has been treated unfairly because of how long he has waited for confirmation, then certainly Judge Clement was treated even worse. I would note that Judge Clement was approved by the committee on a unanimous vote and was confirmed on the floor of the United States Senate on a 99-0 vote. Now, let's get to the President nominee. I support the nomination of Mr. Higginson. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree at Harvard College, summa cum laude, 1983, and his Juris Doctorate from Yale Law School, 87. Upon graduating from law school, the nominee served as a law clerk for Chief Judge Patricia Wald, U.S. Court of Appeals, D.C. Circuit. He then clerked at the Supreme Court for Associate Justice Byron White. Since their clerkships, Mr. Higginson has served as an assistant U.S. attorney. From 89 to 93, he served as the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Massachusetts. In 93, he transferred to the Eastern District of Louisiana, continuing with criminal trial work, and became Chief of Appeals in 1995. From 97 through 98, he was detailed by the Department of Justice to work for the United States Department of State as Deputy Director of the Presidential Rule of Law Initiative. In 2004, he became a part-time Assistant Attorney General while serving as a full-time Associate Professor of Law, Loyola University, New Orleans College of Law. The American Bar Association Standing Committee on the Federal Judiciary has rated Mr. Higginson with a unanimous, well-qualified vote. I intend to vote for his nomination, and I thank the Chair and yield the floor.